Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor, where we're all just trying to survive in a rough world.
Episode 49, Carm, and no one is seeing our beautiful faces because we're having a bit of a technical issue. No worries, though. Our guest who is coming up next, we had that person on camera, but I figured we'd start today with a little audio clip that I think everyone will enjoy, and you better listen to.
Surviving the Survivors is very bad. You can follow initials STS. Subscribe on YouTube.
Word.
Those are my daughters rapping. I am teaching my kids what is important in life. A rap career will make a hell of a lot more money than a law career. And the person who knows that best is our next guest, who's not a rapper, but a comedian. But he could be a rapper because he's half black. He's also half white, like Eminem. And his name is JL Cauvin. Not Cauvin, Cauvin, like the French say. Carm, you excited to speak to our first stand-up comic?
Very much so. I am a firm believer. Oh, I didn't put on. Do I have to put it on?
Yeah, put on your headset. You know, I forgot to put mine on as well.
Okay.
Much better.
Much better. So yes, I am very, 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 very excited because I love humor in all its variations.
And JL is not only funny, but he is arguably, in my humble opinion, the best impersonator in all the world. Up next on the main Schmooze with JL Cauvin.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
Welcome back to Surviving the Survivor. It's time now for the main Schmooze.
Oh my God.
Yes, and in the span, and I kid you not, in the span of trying to log on and coming back now, I was just told that my travel to Chicago has been canceled for next week. So I have and someone I was hoping was going to buy my new special has chosen not to. So in a span of 10 minutes, Zoom errors are literally nothing in terms of what's going on in my comedy life. So
we don't typically start our main schmooze like this, but there's no better way. So JL, I can swear on both Karmela and my own life that we have not had issues like this. Everyone listening, we just had...
We have 48 episodes.
This was like TWA 800. This was catastrophic failure on all ends, including JL's career, apparently, which we'll get into.
That's why they call me the Gaddafi of comedy. That's you know, destruction follows, and it will not end well.
Well,
I may have that influence on you that everything will turn around.
Well,
good. Well, you have a very sweet voice. I'm sorry to interrupt. After listening to a few episodes to get the hang of it, a very soothing voice.
Did you hear that? So, that's exactly what Joel says to me. You know what Joel says to me? When he hears my voice, his blood pressure goes up at least 20 points.
Yeah, at least.
Well, he has a different relationship to you than I do. You were just in my earbuds.
JL is not your son, but I had a whole setup for this segment, but it set itself up. I'll just start with this. My 88-year-old dad, who's sitting in Miami Beach, always tells me a joke, and it goes like this. I'll make it 3 seconds long.
Competitor.
A guy's raised by a pack of wolves in the forest. They take great care of him. He's educated. He ends up...
No. The hunters find him.
Hunters find him. They raise him from this pack of wolves. They take over. He becomes a standout student. He does not go to Williams or Georgetown like the great JL, but he does go to Harvard, another excellent institution, which I personally...
Caltech.
Or Caltech, whatever the story is. Anyway, years later, after graduating, he is. What is he doing, Carm?
No. He killed the joke. I kill all jokes, but I love to tell them. It begins that this large family goes into a big forest, and then when they go home, they count their kids. One is missing. And they really go back and look for him because they are, good people. And they cannot find him. And the pack of wolves finds him. And he spends the beginning of his life on all fours and becomes one of the wolves.
Speed through it, Carm.
And then Joel's story continues that they find him finally. And they bring him back to civilization. And they take him... And he's brilliant, and finally ends up in Harvard as a compromise.
Let's say MIT.
MIT, and then
reboot of Home Alone, by the way.
No, but listen to this, and then it has a very, very, very tragic, sad ending.
Here's the punchline.
He dies chasing a car.
That's a Lenny Bruce joke. That's a Lenny Bruce joke. So the whole point of that story is my dad's a diehard Lenny Bruce fan. And I was going to wear my Lenny Bruce shirt, but instead I wore my Made in Highland Park, New Jersey shirt in honor of JL.
In light of all the bad ways that we treated JL in the beginning, I think you should now have a JL shirt made.
I will, but first, let's tell everyone who we're speaking to. It is the great JL Cauvin. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Cauvin.
Cauvin.
But that was close enough.
Cauvin.
A lot of people try to throw L's in there.
It's very. My mother speaks Francais.
My father was Haitian, so that's where I got the French name.
Okay, so JL...
Some of my best friends are.
JL Cauvin began his career in stand-up comedy 18 years ago, almost 19 now, I guess, while a student at Georgetown, one of the best law schools in the entire world. For a while, he juggled the art of telling jokes with a job as an assistant district attorney in the good old Bronx, where my dad is from, and then as an associate in a large law firm, which sounds horrendous, before turning to stand-up full-time. Cauvin has been featured on The Late Show, The Howard Stern Show, the WTF podcast, now the Surviving the Survivor podcast, Nesson Comedy All-Stars, Comics Unleashed, ESPN's The Dan Le Batard Show, who might be a guest on our show, and The Adam Carolla Show. Much of his humor comes from his ridiculously spot-on impersonations, most notably of Donald Trump and Andrew Cuomo, and hopefully by the end of this podcast, the woman sitting to my left, your right. He's got 6 stand-up albums. He's got 2 albums as Donald Trump, which is awesome. He is super tall and may be our first guest who regularly goes to church here on the Surviving the Survivor podcast.
I didn't know this last thing.
JL, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And he lives
Pleasure.
in New Jersey.
JL, you're used to being amongst Jews. You're from New York, New Jersey.
I'm from Riverdale in New York, and I went to Riverdale Country School, which is a private school in Riverdale, shockingly. And now I live in Bloomfield, New Jersey.
Jersey, baby. I have a ton of Jersey pride. Now,
he's born in New Jersey.
I'm born and raised
at St. Peter's Hospital.
I'm made in HP, New Jersey. A couple of questions we have to get out of the way. Number one, I'm inspired by you because you actually just dropped a ton of weight, right? Are we allowed to talk about this?
Oh, sure. Diabetic amputation, underrated way of losing a lot of weight fast. So happy with that. No, I lost. I've lost 60 pounds since June. I got about 20 more I want to lose, but at 6'7", thank you. At 6'7", you can tend to add on weight easier before people really recognize it as a problem. So people, you put on 20 pounds, they're like, hey, you've been lifting? Nope, this is all natural. And, but by the time you put on 60 and you're looking and going, is that a gut? Do I no longer just look burly, but do I actually have a beer belly full of cookies? And it was, the pandemic was very stressful. I put on a little bit of that weight during the pandemic, but I just reached a point where I said, okay, it's time to, I'm 42, which is not, and you just had your guest, the Spartan
Joe
race
DeSena, yeah.
And you guys were talking about
he'd make you run over the GW bridge and back every day,
carrying 60 pounds on a stone.
Yeah.
But also in terms of your health, like there's a limit to where you can just keep, yes, I'm not 60 or 70, but these miles start to add up. And the quicker I get the weight off now, the better I'll be. Because at 6'7", I'm always going to be a bigger person, regardless of what fitness level I'm in. So it was time. I reached my sort of capacity for comfort food and just said, I don't know what the future holds for me, but it should not hold a weight over 300 pounds.
Well, JL, I can tell you this.
I have to say this, darling, right now you look marvelous.
Oh, thank you.
JL, I've got 10 years on you, and Karmela's got exactly 40 years on you, and I can attest from both of us that it only gets worse. So keep that weight off. I saw myself, I report for the local station here a few days a week to just so my anxiety level remains at a DEFCON 4. I do that. And last night I caught myself on like 3 horrendous, of course it was the one day I just wore basically sweatpants to work. And then it was the one story where I was in a full body shot the entire story because we were doing some whatever. So anyway, needless to say, when I saw myself on camera last night, I realized I should probably stop eating my wrapperless Rolos, which I love at night. That's not a good combination.
I don't want to talk about weight.
Anyway, the next question we have to get out of the way, and then we're going to get to comedy, is why are you a Utah Jazz fan? I'm guessing Karl Malone?
Sure. Yeah, as a kid, I mean, I have a joke on my special, my currently unsold special, that my parents, I grew up, my father was a tall black man, my mom, a short Irish American woman. And they say they never got divorced, but it was a home full of conflict. So I would joke seeing.
Wait a second. I wrote down this joke and I have to say it. You said at least they hated each other for the content of their characters.
Yes, it's a warped fulfillment of Dr. King's dream. But it was the joke that I wrote was seeing Karl Malone and John Stockton play so well together. It inspired me that a short Irish Catholic and a tall black man could actually get along.
Carm has no idea what we're talking about, but I like it.
No, I like
2 Hall of Fame basketball players, short shorts, big muscles.
I figured it. I deducted that it must be 2 people who are kind of matched, but kind of not matched.
So JL,
right.
If you haven't noticed already, Karmela and I both, her worse than me, have a horrible habit of interrupting both each other and our guests. So if you'll do us a favor and just keep a running tally and you can let us know at the end who's interrupted who more, I would appreciate that. But so I am a massive fan of comedy, and I found you on Twitter, to be honest.
Confess that you tried it.
We'll get into that in a minute, but I've got a challenge.
You have a good dry wit. I mean, listening to the episodes I listened to, you do have a solid dry wit. I enjoy both of what you and your mom bring to the table.
Oh, really? Good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
I listened to a couple episodes and I was like, hey, this is. I like to. I'm going to add it to the rotation, and I'm not pandering. I have no reason to.
Yeah.
Because I
just
like having
pile it on. Go ahead.
Well, then you know what? I'm just going to shoot to the end of this, which what Karmela was saying, which I challenge you to bring Carm and I on as your opening act one time. I want to do it.
I am
if
not
you like
going.
performing for small crowds, we can make that happen.
As long as it's in Harrisburg.
Come to my condominium. I bribe the people.
But in all seriousness, there is no, to me, there's nothing more difficult than getting on a stage and making people laugh. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is you can be a funny guy. There are a lot of funny people out there, but joke telling is pretty technical. You need, a premise, a setup, timing, all of that. And I learned a lot of this because when the pandemic hit, and after my wife forced my career down the drain because I had 3 kids and wouldn't let me be a network correspondent anymore, and I was becoming, slightly suicidal at that point, I said, hey, what can I do to lift myself out of this? And what would any normal person do but be criticized incessantly? So I took a stand-up comedy class, and it was torture, but it was fun. This was in LA, and I ended it by doing a set at the Improv. My opening line was something along the lines of, I used to be a national correspondent with Fox News. and now I'm telling jokes. So in essence, nothing's really changed. That was my opening line. But anyway,
okay,
long story short, enough about me. But so I saw JL, and I was blown away by his impersonations. And I have a friend who I'm sure you know, Russ Meneve. He and I were...
I know his name. I don't know him personally, but I do know who he is.
We were pages together at NBC. So he was going to come on. He didn't come on. Chappelle asked to come on. I told him to go F himself because of the transgender stuff. And he was disappointed. But anyway, so my point is this. I laud you and respect you. But with that said, how do you get inspiration for your joke telling?
Sure. Well, oddly enough, based on what you said about being sort of mildly suicidal, I was in a really, I didn't identify it as depression during law school. I just identified it as, I just like to sleep till noon on a day that I have morning classes every week. And it was comedy that just was the hobby. I didn't do it in a sort of, I've got to do this. I was just like looking for a hobby, and it ended up really alleviating a lot of the stress and depression of law school. So I started from a similar place, not knowing that was what I was doing, but it really did sort of help. But in terms of inspiration, I started much like George Carlin, somebody I'm never compared to. I started doing impressions on stage, and after a few years, you start to get the hang of performing and new ideas and trying to express different things. And I just sort of, about 4 or 5 years in, I just shelved all the impressions into like YouTube stuff. I figured, because it was that idea of having to always get on stage and go, what's funny? If Owen Wilson were your gym attendant, like you feel like such a fraud after a while, like trying to force premises into so you can validate doing voices. So sketches became an easy way to just be like, no, the sketch is the sketch. So stand up, as you just live life, you start with your family. That's the easiest point to start with in terms of what maybe makes you somewhat unique. And then you go through terrible experiences, fun experiences. And the way at this point, almost 19 years in, it's kind of good. I've done it so much that I sort of have a good sense. Like my radar is probably 90% effective on, if I have an idea that I think is funny, there's a 90% chance it's actually going to be a good bit in terms of how I work with it. But I think all sorts of things inspire me. Like I go for long walks each day. That's part of my exercise routine until I have, by the way, meniscus surgery in March, which I know is something near and dear to your heart.
I've got, I'm going to Dr. Best, Best, and they say he is the best. I've got an appointment this Monday. He really has listened. JL, I'm impressed. You really did listen.
Well, I especially perk up when it has something to do with me, like something directly relevant to me.
JL, I feel like you and I are soulmates. Do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, maybe.
Do you have a girlfriend right now?
As Mitch Hedberg would say, no, but I know a woman who would be very angry to hear me say that.
Carm, do you know who Mitch Hedberg is?
No, but I know what he said.
But he's considered one of the best stand-up comics ever. You and Dad would like him.
No, I am very limited, but in my limited way, I was thinking of your when he asked you where do you draw your inspiration from? You also draw from the day-to-day, political chatter, right?
Oh, sure.
And that then in itself is funny. The political chatter, if you really look at it in a humorous way, it's kind of funny. And you do, like when you did the thing with one of the very recent ones that I listened to, and it's not a recent one of the not recent ones. For example, what you did about Pence on your podcast. I mean, it was funny, because everybody says he's a latent. Why do you have to be latent today when everybody is not latent? I don't understand. Be open about it.
Carm,
it's a fun.
I was going to say, you do understand that 99% of the humor that comics come up with is political, right? This is not, you're not coming
I thought that what sells better is sex, no?
I don't know. No, but JL, like in the
I'm gonna
course,
purchase it, but I don't know how well it sells as comedy.
JL,
Wait a second.
we're really interrupting. Go ahead, Carm. You go.
Because I'm very excited about having
go
you
ahead. Go
coming.
ahead, because I have tons of questions. We'll have JL. This will be a Rogan episode here until JL leaves. But go on.
No, I finished now.
You just said you had a question.
Well, you
JL, so this is what I'm curious about, because I sit frozen in anxiety most of the time. But like right now, I'm working on a book, and I come up with a lot of excuses not to write the book because it's difficult. But in the course of a week, let's just use that as a window. Like, how many are you writing jokes every day? Are you like, is everything you look at through the prism of this could be a joke? And then when do you know what to take as a possible joke and put it into your routine? Because you're like, this will win.
Sure. I think that, first of all, as much as it sounds cool to be a full-time comedian, I'm also a full-time attorney. So I'm just exhausted constantly. I work for a firm right now. So this is my lunch hour, sadly. And it is what I
I feel worse now, definitely.
No, it's fine. I'm at home. So it's
but
not
on
like
the other hand, we save you from eating.
Yeah, that's right. But I will say I think what I do is like the impressions have become a fun way to just kind of give daily or 3 or 4 times a week stuff, like of the moment stuff. That doesn't go in the act. What goes in the act is if something is like either strikes me as so funny, or if I've built a kind of significant story around it. If I can give you one example of something I'm working on now, and it always has to be, it's never officially in the act until I've done it a few times on stage and it does well. So I can go, that one's ready. I'm going to try that out at an open mic, or bury it in the middle of a set of proven jokes to cushion it and see if it works. Like one I'm working on right now is about doctors. And I talk about, how you have doctors, like they get into plastic surgery, and it always starts as, oh, well, I'm going to, because my mom, just speaking of survivors, just had breast cancer surgery. And it's one of those things where it may, of course, once she was fine, I start thinking of, how can I explore this? And I thought, yes, there's doctors who work on breasts who are there to reconstruct women after surgery or to remove cancerous lumps. And that's wonderful. Then there's those rogue agents in medical school who go, I'd really like to give some porn stars tits. And they go in that direction. And then I thought, are there any other doctors who go like this? And I'm pardon my language, but it's like, you have those doctors who go to foreign countries to fix cleft lips, and it's like, hey, little girl, now those boys won't make fun of you anymore. We've patched you up. But if you want the boys to like you even more,
use your new
how about we plump those up? How about we plump those up and give you some real DSLs? So that's a bit that I'm sort of going to try out in Chicago and see how the people like that.
If you get your flight. Carm, your hand is raised. Carm?
Okay, like I'm thinking of the real ethnic Jackie Mason, who just died, the comedian. Sure. And he loved, he put Jews in their place.
Shockingly, Jackie Mason used to spend his winters down here in Miami Beach, so my parents used to literally cross paths with him.
And we even sometimes we talk to him. It's like, but
now that I know JL's on his lunch break, speed it up. Go on.
You interrupted
No.
me. I have an agenda.
The man can't tell me how long my lunch break is. Okay. They can fire me, but they can't tell me how long my lunch break is.
Carm,
That's
continue.
right. They have another option, to fire you. No, but I was thinking, like Jackie Mason's public. We were talking on the way here with Joel, and he said, what percentage of people who watch him are Jews? And I said 99.3%. And I said, but I'm thinking your humor must have a certain type of audience. I don't know if because I don't think you can go over just across. I don't think you can go anywhere and tell your jokes and get the same reaction. So who would you say is your audience that you that they respond to you the best?
Carm, you have a
Sure.
future as Anderson Cooper because you took 4 hours to ask a 3-word
I
question.
think it was a very good question.
That was 3 news cycles
is.
that passed.
It's a good question. My audience, it's very simple: smart and attractive people. So if you don't like my jokes, I guess you're not in my target market.
I love this.
No,
this is funny.
one of the things that I have developed though as a comedian, because I really for 16 years I have been, and I still am kind of an independent contractor, if you will. So I go to clubs as a middle act. I don't know who I'm performing with. I don't know who their audience is. I'm just thrown into a club for a weekend, and I have to do the best I can with whatever audience is there. And it can really vary very much in terms of who you're going to be in front of, because they're not there to see you. They're there to see the guy or gal after you. So, I had done some late night TV spots. I had done some big podcasts, and I was just traveling the country. So you do develop, and I'm a very prolific comedian. Like I'm without speaking to the incredibly high quality of comedy that I create. I am prolific, whether you like me or not. I am, and it's some of that stems from just having an active brain, but also just always having to have stuff that will work on different crowds. So whereas maybe 10 years ago, I would have said to you, you're right, I only do really well with certain crowds. I can now go really anywhere and pretty much knock it out of the park. And the cool thing is now I actually do have fans of mine coming to shows, not just random strangers showing up that I have to sort of do a more generic, well, these work with everybody jokes. Now I can be much more specific to who I am.
So your groupies, let's say your groupies are from New Jersey.
Sure.
How far would they travel geographically?
Probably three blocks. They're not very passionate about my work.
I was going to give you one turnpike exit.
No.
I did have a fan fly. I'm not going to blow up her spot. I did have a fan fly because there were no shows. It was the first show I'd had in a year. She flew from the Pacific Northwest to Boston for kind of she needed to get it. I had a family fly from Columbus, Ohio to Washington, D.C. to see me because they had seen me for a year and they were like, well, I don't see you with any shows here. We want to get out and take a trip. So that meant that was very meaningful. That was sort of profound.
How do you show your appreciation for something like this? Do you
oral sex?
Oh, I thought so.
Yeah. No, and it's okay as long as I don't enjoy it. My girlfriend doesn't mind. It's more about just creating that bond with the fans that's so important.
So important.
How's the woman look who flew from the Northwest? Attractive? Was there something underlying that?
She was beautiful because she takes smart and interested.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. She's just a very dedicated fan, and it was. I felt bad because she went out with a couple. I took a couple of fans out just for drinks and appetizers after a late night. And I was like, I've got that $30 tab person who flew across the country. It felt very inadequate. But at the same time, that's a little bit of comedic insecurity when your career has been a struggle. I don't think everybody should fly across the country to see me. I would like to go to your city, preferably. But you sort of go, yeah, but I the flip side of that is I did make a lot of people very happy for many, many months with a lot of comedy content.
Online.
So it's... Yeah. So while I don't think I'm worth a cross-country trip, I also think that, you know what, I did do something good at the same time.
So the law career right now, is that out of necessity or are you just out of fear? Yeah. And now let me ask you, hold on, Carm, put that hand down. Let me ask you a question because I relate to a lot of this stuff. So I was very heavily involved in broadcast news. I was a national correspondent with Fox News. I left. I was traveling too much. I had 3 kids. But I keep one foot in news now, and it's literally killing me because this podcast has become a full-time job, and I'm trying to write this book, and I've got to corral this personality and do it. And I have 3 little kids. By the way, don't ever get married and have kids because that will just that's full-blown depression.
Listen, I have bad news for you. He held out until 40 42.
Yeah, I was your age, JL. Yeah.
And then,
wow.
then he succumbed.
I've got 10 years on
And
you.
my
exactly.
daughter-in-law, who is a beautiful, beautiful young woman, said, if a right woman would have walked in earlier who knew how to get him, she would have gotten him.
By the way,
but she got him at 42, and that's his high school friends have grandchildren, and he has tiny little kids.
JL, don't
Well,
ever.
I don't know that his high school friends are doing it right either.
Yeah. JL, if there's one thing you get out of this podcast, do not get married and have kids. So you do it out of fear. I find that interesting because I do what I do out of fear. But do you ever cry in the shower and say, man, I need to just do this completely full time? Don't care if I'm living out of a cardboard box. Like, do you ever resent yourself for not being able to let go of that fear?
A little bit. I think what's funny is as I think back before, and this is, I'm certainly not going to blame my girlfriend at all, but I feel an extra responsibility. We live together. We've been in a very serious long-term relationship. So I feel a sort of obligation to her. And I don't mean that as any pressure she puts on me. To cut this story short, is I got laid off from a law firm in 2009 during the Great Recession, though I like to joke, because it's true, that I got laid off before they made the recession layoffs. But I like to consider, they were like, well, you suck, so you definitely have to go. Later on in the year, we'll make the economy is tanking cuts. So if they'd fired me in 2008, it would look worse. But in 2009, I looked like just like a part of the mass being let go from a terrible economy. But at that time, I was a year off from my late night stand-up debut on Ferguson. I had money in the bank, partly from a returned engagement ring. So I was like, this is my moment. I'm fit. I look good. My career is on the rise. I got some money in the bank. This is the time to go for it. 3 years later, after traveling around as a feature act and basically just drinking and being lazy, I was working part-time in my mom's office, which is not where you want to be as an attorney, working for your residential real estate leasing office mom. And ever since then, so I worked, I got decent comedy work. I also just did part-time legal work. But 2020, I made more money in 2020 than I had made in my entire comedy career combined, and also more than any year working as an attorney by a lot. This year it's down, but it still would be my second best year of comedy earnings this year. And yet being 42 and knowing that I have a great safety nest is a great feeling of comfort. But the idea of having no faith in the comedy business that basically ignored me for 18 years, including now. Like, I still don't have a manager or an agent nor do I have any inquiries or contacts after the last 2 years that I had, which is sort of stunning to a lot of people. I'm genuinely afraid, even though I really want to be free of a day job. I am sort of once bitten, twice shy when it comes to abandoning the steady flow of money and health benefits. So it's not an inspirational story. Like, there's a lot of people out there who'll go, you've got to just go for it. And I'm like, I did, and I failed. So now going for it a second time is a little more scary. And I'm older. So I know that's not necessarily, a lot of people like to just pump out the inspirational message, but the truth is, I worked my ass off as a comedian. I know I'm very, very good at it. And if not for an algorithmic stroke of luck on Twitter, I might still be an anonymous sort of struggling comedian. So it's hard for me to just go, yes, go for it, kids. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think you have to have an element of reality for sure in anything you're seeking out.
And if the gigs were coming, like, I'm getting sporadic good gigs, but without an agent or a manager, there just isn't the work to justify me having no day job. There's no point in me giving up the money.
He have an agent?
Well, that's my next question. Do you not have the agent and manager out of your own volition, or because someone does not want to represent you right now?
The latter.
How is that possible?
How is that possible?
I've had friends reach out to I think people have pigeonholed me. It's a weird thing because I had the stand-up late night credits before I did the impressions. Then I became then I was on some big podcasts and became popular on those for a brief time. And then I became most well-known, obviously, for the impressions, mainly Trump. But, the special that I'm shopping right now is like amazing. Like I'm not bashful about saying it. And it has nothing to do with impressions. And it's one of those things where I feel like people, whether it's demographically, comedically, it's the shorthand for the industry in general is always to kind of just pick what you are late. So right now, I'm sure to industry people, I'm Trump impression guy. Mm-hmm. And even though I've had friends, literally friends in the business, reach out to different agents to say, here's his whole story that you should check out. He's not just this, he's a whole lot of other stuff. And even my friends couldn't get responses from agents. So it's like, at some point you just go, I don't know why. I don't know what the process is, but I'm about to be, not to push another plug. It's just a more evidence.
Plug away.
Why I'm perplexed. But
plug away. This is the venue.
Well, I got, that's what my fans said after the show. They said, plug away. The Billions, I'm on the show Billions this season, one episode, but it's a really cool, like fun guest role. The only reason I got that is because the creator of the show enjoyed my Twitter videos and told the casting agent without telling me, it was all a surprise to me. Can you audition this guy for this role? I think maybe he'd be good at this role. Mm-hmm. I auditioned for it, my first thing ever, and I got it. At the same time, like a week earlier, a friend of mine's manager, like basically declined to, was like, if we've never, like, how good can he be if I've never heard of him? And so it's a weird business because here I am getting a role on a big show that a lot of real actors would kill for that kind of little break in their career. And yet all these things keep accumulating and I can't get any interest, what? It was just,
I feel like,
which is very strange.
I feel like JL and I are truly soulmates. I'm going to dump my wife after this because news is not unlike, basically in your business and in the news business, I'd say more so in news. I mean, your talent doesn't always necessarily get you where you want to be. There are a lot of other factors at play. Yes. And one of the things
sometimes you just have like Jesse Waters.
Exactly. Let me tell you something. There's one guy.
I can't watch that guy if you pay me $1 million.
If there's one guy I want to get in an octagon with, it is Jesse Waters. He's the only guy. He's the only guy I know I can beat up.
I said he looks like Judd. He looks like was it Judd? Not Judd Hirsch. Who's the guy from The Breakfast Club?
No, I was going to say Emilio Estevez.
The guy who raises his fist at the end. I said he looks like that. If that guy was raised with a trust fund, he'd be Jesse Waters.
but Jesse Waters is not worth our time. What we need for him.
Jesse Waters, I'll kick your ass.
I worked in psychology for a while.
Still waters run dumb.
And there are a lot of mud. There's a lot of mud.
No, so I was, Karm, before you interrupted me for the 37th millionth time.
But this is very important. Let me do this before
if I wasn't Jewish and my last name was just, let's say my name was Joel Book, I would be Jake Tapper, even though Jake Tapper is Jewish. That's a bad example. But I would be, if I had started earlier and I didn't have a man at the end of my name and I wasn't as pasty.
It's not true.
Yes, 100% it is true.
No, you should also be gay. You have to be gay.
100% it's true.
Be gay. I'm sorry.
It percolates such anger in me that I can't even say this on camera.
You see,
I was basically threatening
Cauvin is not an angry man.
No.
I'm an angry man. I'm sorry. I'm just being podcasts make me pleasant, but my dog sitting here right now has had to leave leave the room many times over the
When
pandemic.
you lost it?
Look, he's got
Yes.
a dog. He's
No, but may I say something?
Carm, this
I
What-
almost broke this hand on a computer 3 months ago. So don't tell me I'm not angry.
No, but I think you have to be angry to be a comedian.
Carm.
You
Well,
have,
it's
but
different
let me
ways of
finish.
exploring
Let
things,
me
yeah.
finish
Sure, yep.
this part. This may be an important message from your sponsor here. I think what you need in life, you need a real badass person to represent you.
I'll do it.
You know, that's what you need.
I agree.
Because your anger is maybe, and I don't want to insult you, but maybe not the right anger. You know, you don't let it always
Carm
come
is
out.
don't worry, JL. I lived with this my whole life. She even challenges your anger level. That's how annoying it gets. She does that shit to me. You're not angry enough. As I'm like curling my toes and put a hole in the fucking drywall. It's not angry enough. I was in the Holocaust. I saw people
No,
angry
I
in the
don't give a
Holocaust.
shit. I didn't see anything in the Holocaust. I was a baby. Forget about
right,
it.
there's-
It's his invention, the Holocaust.
I'm
No,
actually-
I was a child in the
My
Holocaust.
Jewish guilt is settling in because it's JL's
No,
lunch. But there's a couple things I really want to get to.
Eat something while we talk. Eat something.
So JL made the news.
I've got my jug of bro water.
No,
What's
eat
up?
it.
Can I work in?
Eat clean, bro. So JL actually was, it's interesting because I follow you pretty closely on Twitter, but you would never know I follow you closely on Twitter. So that gives me hope that there's a lot of people following you closely on Twitter, which brings me back to this. I hate this guy that said he never heard of you, so why should I bother? That's like, what a dumbass thing to say, especially for an agent who should be
Hearing about everybody, whoever who is around.
But so JL actually made the news when I saw Chappelle recently here in Florida at the Hard Rock. I think Chappelle is a genius. He gave, I actually, 5-6 years ago, my wife and I bumped into him at a hotel here in Miami when he was performing. This is a funny story. And we get on the elevator, he jumps in, and he looks over and he's like, oh, damn, my wife was pregnant. He's like, big mistake. And we just sat there and, we were laughing. And then we were talking. He was actually really cool. And then the next day, I treated myself to a massage and I'm like delirious and I'm walking backwards and bump into someone. And it was Dave Chappelle. And he was in a towel and I was in a towel. And he turned around and he goes, damn, it's you again? And I was like, holy shit, Chappelle knows who I am. But so that's my brush with fame. And then I told him I had scalped tickets for like $300 a piece or $400 to see him. And he's
And
like,
then you cry about money.
and he's like, damn, you're an idiot. He's like, you should have just asked me. He's like, I would have given you tickets. So that was my Chappelle story. But I saw Chappelle again and did not think he was funny at all. I just thought he was very preachy, and obviously there was a lot of controversy right now. Chauvin has a joke. He said he got to D.C., made my way to the Farragut North Station, which sounds like a drunk Dave Chappelle telling people where DuPont Circle is. That was a JL Cauvin joke. But
it's funny. You just said, it's funny. You just said Chauvin. And it's one of the things that the first time you said it, right?
Oh, did I say that?
Yes. And I've been making jokes on stage where I go, the idea that I'm still even performing with a name that sounds like COVID and the cop who killed George Floyd, maybe that explains why nobody's showing up. They're like, wait, Derek Chauvin's doing comedy? That seems pretty low class Pittsburgh improv.
But
that was my thing with Chappelle is that I am not somebody who, I don't like try to trash working comedians and stuff, but when somebody becomes a mega A-list celebrity, I feel like the same way one of my first videos to ever go viral was a Louis C.K. impression from 2013. And that blew up because I was just like, and a lot of comics and a lot of fans were very upset. They were like, F you, you're jealous. And I'm like, what do you mean jealous? I'm just he's a celebrity. Like, why is it not okay? Why comedians tend to take this very hypocritical, righteous stand for free speech and no rules, unless you poke fun at one of their own. And then it becomes this apostasy of like, you're out, you're excommunicated. How dare you? And I'm like, right. So if you want to make fun of the Catholic Church or the Pope or a rabbi or a mentally retarded child, all that has to be okay. But the minute you go after some sort of comedian who is just, now you can go after the Dane Cooks, or if we're having a bad misogynistic day, Amy Schumer, if she's popular at the moment. But when you go after somebody who embodies so much of what these comedians want to be, Louis C.K., a very talented, intelligent, truth-telling, not afraid of anything. Dave Chappelle speaking about society. If you go after them, comedians act like it's heresy. And I like to point out that hypocrisy, because I'm not going after the dude, the MC at the Toledo Funny Bone for being a mediocre comedian. I'm going after a guy who's worth $100 million who's giving TED Talks when he should just save it for a podcast. And people are like, you're just a hater. I can't believe you're doing that. And I had a guy who I blocked who was like a fan of mine, but I blocked him because he was like, maybe you should sell out Madison Square Garden before you start poking fun at Dave Chappelle. And I go, is that the new standard for mocking things? If you can't, before you start talking about income inequality, why don't you found a bank, bro? Right? Like, people are so dumb and take things so personal now. Everything's wrapped up in everybody's own personal feelings. And I've said this, the thing about my comedy is that my stand-up, there are people who love my Trump material, whether I'm talking about jokes about the Jeff Epstein plane or not, that can go very dark. But as long as I'm making fun of the right target, they're like, JL, you're so brilliant. I made a joke last year where I said, do you think Hunter Biden is ever like, I get it, Dad, I'm not your favorite son. And I had a bunch of people immediately block me and go, this is disgusting. And I go, disgust? Because he clearly loved Beau Biden more. Like, that's just truth. But it was weird because, and then the same people who block me or call me a hack or call me a guy who needs Trump, these are the people who would love my stand-up, and some of them do, for being totally irreverent and apolitical. But you have people on both sides who will like shut me out if I'm not giving them their exact, what exactly they want, which can be frustrating. Sorry for that monologue. Yes.
Karmela in the back row, your hand is raised.
I think because I go way back, like when Lenny Bruce was.
She goes back to Mark Twain.
Hold back to, I can go back. He was funny. He was holding to jail because of profanities, right? That was kind of when you did not have freedom to be funny, whichever way you wanted to. It was like censored. And I think now, today in 2022, we are back to that. Now we can use all the 4-letter words are okay and accepted. But you try to attack a Republican about his side of the story or attack a Democrat, it's worse rules of non-engagement than they were in the 60s. The censorship is worse.
Well, I'll give you a good example of when I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I got into it with some hardcore Trump supporters, and because they were yelling out, "Let's go, Brandon," during my set.
Oh, that was funny, your Let's Go, Brandon. Your Let's Go, Brandon is funny.
Oh, thank you. Well, and what I did was I basically started mocking them for it. And yet I'll give them credit, though I find their political views abhorrent. I thought they were a perfect example of a good comedy audience. They laughed at themselves. I wasn't trying to be super mean to them, and I wasn't making it super specific. But they were able to laugh at some of the stuff I said, even though it was about their beloved leader, Donald Trump. And I thought that was, people were like trashing them on Twitter going, oh, they're so stupid. And I go, yeah, they might be, but I can't pretend like I was mad at them, because I was there to do comedy, and they ended up, other than their initial heckle, They all came up to me and said, great show. They laughed at themselves, which is the thing that I think both sides, everybody likes to pretend like the left only is against, they want cancel culture, and the right is this utopia of say whatever you want. It's not. I think both sides are angry when it's their own, there's a lot on both sides in terms of not wanting to hear anything you don't agree with. And in a comedy setting, and in a comedy setting, that's particularly bad because that's a place where you need to let go a little bit, not get tighter into your, I get it. If you're at a school, that's a place where certain things, right and wrong. Well,
that's why I asked. I think that's where you personally are running into difficulty that, not you, but the comedians, stand-up comedians in general. I think
me individually too.
Yeah, but the polarization is so unbelievably insane. It's so on both sides. It's so bad that it's not like most people are just avoiding relating even. So when you get into a Harrisburg, you really have to check with the voting things. Were they blue? Were they red? You have to orient yourself to your public.
You need to take a Gallup poll.
Before you stand up.
JL, who do you?
But I do think it was cool though, and I really have to hammer this point though. They were a good audience. Like after we got through that, now it could be a different night. I'd get the guys who want to get up on stage and throw a chair.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I was fortunate that night, and I give them credit for being the kind of comedy audience they should be, which is you can have views that I don't like or disagree with, but understand that if I'm trying to be funny on stage, if I'm telling this in jokes, then that counts the most, not how I voted or what I say when I'm talking in front of a class or with my friends. Like what I'm doing on stage, if it's funny, should be given a lot more latitude. And I think comedy in general has reached, I made a lot of money because my comedy was reaching people through the internet, in their phones, in their homes, in their offices, not on stage, not at comedy clubs. But I think now you have more people who I like comedy because I like memes and GIFs. So I'll go to a comedy club and that's like, yes, but this is a separate culture. This is a separate kind of art form that isn't you chuckling at a funny picture at your desk. And I think some of those people are bringing this sensibility into comedy, stand-up comedy that really doesn't belong. Like it needs to still be a freer space. That's not me giving total license to guys who want to get up there and scream racial slurs and give lectures on trans people and then cloak it in, but it's comedy.
Yeah. So today, aside from yourself, who do you think is the best stand-up comic out there?
He's dead.
Who?
I said the one who is the best is dead.
Not necessarily.
I would say my current living favorite comedian. It's a weird thing to say because what he does is not maybe traditional stand-up comedy. I think Bo Burnham is a legitimate generational genius.
Yeah, never heard of him.
Bo Burnham, I'm gonna.
He had a huge special on Netflix called Inside. He filmed an entire special in his his house. And the guy is a genius, and he's young. He's been like a YouTube celebrity since he was like 16. But I think he is somebody that I look at and just go, but as far as somebody doing just straight up stand-up comedy, probably my two favorites right now living are Gary Gulman and Bill Burr.
Yeah. Bill's my favorite. I just saw him, going to see him again. He's just so good. How about your favorite dead one?
I'll give you. And Chris. The thing is, that's saying right now, my favorite comedian all time is Chris Rock. But and I don't mean this as an insult, but he's not kind of out there the way he was, obviously in like the 90s that were at his peak.
Right.
Favorite deceased comics. The two I would list are Greg Giraldo and Patrice O'Neill.
Interesting.
And I always tell people, I say, if you want to know my influences, now that I'm sort of a fully formed, I know what I am as a comedian and what my so-called brand is. My three biggest influences, I think, in retrospect, are Greg Giraldo, Patrice O'Neill, and Gary Gulman. And there's pieces of each of them, sort of, I think, in what I do.
Interesting. So the other thing that we have to get to that I'm actually blown away by are these impersonations.
Sure.
To me, like I am tone deaf. I never hear words to a song. I can't sing. How do you create these impersonations? It's like learning a language to me. Is this just a natural gift? What is this?
Yeah, I think without sounding pretentious about it, I sometimes wonder if I got a good ear because I had like a New York mom, a foreign-born father. You grow up in New York City in private school, so you're hearing local accents, but also non-regional diction. And so I feel like I've been hearing lots of different things, but obviously that wouldn't make me good at doing the voices. That would just be me picking up on subtleties. I think I have an above average ability to mimic, I guess, or to at least pick up things, that can make impressions good. Sometimes it's the voice, sometimes it's tone or subtleties that can make an impression fun. And you
were doing this though back in 6th grade. You were doing Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, so this is like innate. This isn't like
and I think a psychologist would call it sublimation. I was a very violent elementary school kid, and they sent me to a child psychologist for 2 years. And when I emerged, I was no longer punching kids, but I was making fun of them and doing voices. So I think that it's a pretty clear correlation of why I started doing humor, because humor doesn't get you in reformatory school.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Jean-Claude Van Damme made all my friends laugh. Now it probably sounded like, "Hey, I am in kickboxer," because but in your mind and in your friend's mind, your voices aren't high pitched. Yeah. You always sound normal, like a boy.
Puberty,
it probably sounded like a girl doing Jean-Claude Van Damme.
So
JL, I just have to tell you this. Must tell you this. Sarah Weiss started to imitate my accent. She was maybe 14-year-old, my daughter's friend. Mm-hmm. And then a terrible thing happened to her. It's a true story. She couldn't stop speaking in my accent, even relating to others. Did it ever happen to you when you were doing Trump and then afterwards you are going to the dentist and you're still talking like Trump?
What's funny is that when I do the impression too much in a given day, whether I'm doing like cameo videos or just filming sketches, my voice gets very hoarse. Mm-hmm. And it starts to sound a little, so if I've been doing this all day, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go get some food. We're good. We're going to get some food. You want to eat food? Let's have some very strong food. Why do I still sound like this? So sometimes it gets worn into my voice for a day.
JL, since it's almost getting to dinner time, I want you to indulge us in a couple of things here. Can you, if Donald Trump was a guest on Surviving the Survivor, what would he say to Karmela and I about the show?
I don't think nobody's been a bigger fan or friend, by the way, to the Jews than me. Okay. And I think you'd agree with this, unless you're like a total radical leftist oil person, but nobody's been a bigger fan of the Jewish people. Okay. We gave you Ivanka, by the way, what a trade that was. You gave us Jared Kushner, who's a total nothing, and you got an extremely hot, very sexy, and I say this as a father, you got a very hot and sexy Gentile to convert. That's like the Babe Ruth. That's like a Babe Ruth trade for and I always said the Jewish people are very strong at negotiating. But I respect you for surviving. They call it the Holocaust, which as you know, is not good, not a good thing. But I think I also survived. You saw what happened when they stole the election from me? I would argue there's never been anything as bad, and I'm including the Holocaust, by the way. There's never been anything as bad as when they took an election. You know, they didn't take an election in Germany. They took other things. They were not nice, but they took other things. But they never took an election. They never stole an election. So I think, you know, if anybody's the survivor here, I think I'm probably surviving even better than you, to be honest.
Can you, in your best Donald Trump voice, can you tell everyone that they should definitely subscribe to Surviving the Survivor on YouTube?
As long as obviously you have to pay my fee of $2 billion. But no, I think everybody, excuse me, if you can hear my voice, my very strong voice, you should subscribe. It's called Surviving the Survivor, and it's a very tough, very strong podcast. And you should go on YouTube. You know, it's one of the few platforms that's not super radical left trying to deplatform me. You should go on YouTube and subscribe. They call it subscribe to Surviving the Survivor.
That was awesome. Now,
you know, this guy is now put it in his head that this podcast will take off. So he's trying everything.
And now what?
And I tell him, I said it's one more illusion that you'll have to shred in life.
Shed, not shred.
Shred.
My abs are shredded. And what would Andrew Cuomo say to Karmela? Would he flatter her?
He would say, I touched your derriere.
Karmela, as you know, I thought for an instant that you were Italian because, as you know, Karmela is a very sort of traditional Italian name. And, you know, I said, well, I would like to meet this Karmela. You know, they tell me that you're married. And as a Catholic, I respect the institution of marriage. But obviously, sometimes my Italian charm can get the better of me. And possibly we could be, you know, I wouldn't say intimate, but maybe get a little closer. Unless, of course, you're sort of one of these politically motivated people who wants to say that what I'm doing is wrong. But no, I think we could have a very passionate time together, so much so that you might need a ventilator when I am done.
So awesome. In your Andrew Cuomo voice, can you tell?
Stop asking for more.
This is important.
Stop begging. I am classier than you.
In your Andrew Cuomo voice, can you tell people to go watch Surviving the Survivor?
This is your former governor, Andrew Cuomo, and I think everybody should go to YouTube and listen and watch Surviving the Survivor. Okay, because nobody survives more than me, and I plan on running for governor again.
That's so. It's incredible to me that he can do this. Can you do Karmela? Is it possible? You'd have to do it in your prepubescent voice.
Like many women have said to me, I'm not that good with women.
She's a tough one to do. I mean, I can't do it.
He's constantly trying to, in his sarcastic attacks, tries to imitate me, and it doesn't sound like me.
Yeah, I
forget about.
You know what's weird?
You gave us so much more than we gave you, and we want to give you some.
By the way, the biggest question of them all is, what does JL stand for? Are you allowed to tell us this?
Sure, Jean-Louis.
Oh.
Jean-Louis
Cauvin.
That's such a great name. Jean-Louis Cauvin.
Once I win an Emmy or two, I'll do the Larry Fishburne to Lawrence Fishburne transition, and I will go by Jean-Louis. But when it started in college with basketball, I had delusions of grandeur that, you know, I'm going to be scoring so many points that I don't want announcers on the road calling me Gene Lewis. So I went with JL. And then when you're performing in the middle of nowhere, America, they tend to butcher names. You know, when Starbucks can't get JL right, you feel like Jean-Louis might be a tough pull for America. So one day when I'm famous enough, I do have a joke about this on one of my albums, though, where I go, you have Wyclef Jean, you have Jean-Claude Van Damme, you have Jean-Luc Picard. So people in America can get those names when they're attached to entertainers or, fictional characters. But apparently when I show up to my doctor's office for the 20th year in a row, Gene Lewis, still Jean-Louis after all these years. Thank you.
Man, I love that name.
There is this famous painter, Basquiat. What is his first name? Who knows?
Jean-Michel.
Jean-Michel.
By the way, JL is a...
Do you speak French?
Carmen, you just see that I was talking and you just completely cut me off. I was going to say JL is a voracious reader, which is why he got into Georgetown. How do you find all this time, man?
I don't sleep well because I'm constantly very stressed. So it's amazing what you can do when you can't sleep.
Yeah. JL, I'm going to start calling you at like 2 a.m. when I'm doing the same thing as you.
Sure.
There was one other thing that was important to me, and now I've got a Karmela moment.
What did I teach you?
Oh, I'm supposed to end every podcast with this question, and I'll tell you a funny story because I did it last week. But JL, how can Karmela and I help you?
You see, we always ask for there is a Yiddish word called a schnorrer. You know, a schnorrer is somebody who goes to other Jews and says, my son is studying and I'm studying and we need a little support. So he's always schnorrering people for service. And I said, ask people like Kennedy did, what they can do for their country. You know, what can they do?
JL, before you answer that, let me tell you the funny story. So I tried that for the first time last week. We had Dr. Avi Loeb on, who's a Harvard astrophysicist who they're making a movie about now, who believes he saw... and again, this is a Harvard astrophysicist. This is not Middlesex County College. And believes he saw a UFO on a telescope, like very far away, like not the UFOs that we see here. So,
not the same, something that came from
something that's extraterrestrial. Anyway, the point
Milky Way, extra Milky Way.
We asked him what we could do for him.
Three Musketeers.
And in all seriousness, he says, I need $100 million for my telescope.
But he wasn't joking.
He wasn't joking. He
he says, can we? I said, Joel says, my mother says we always have to ask, can we do, because we asked somebody else and we had somebody else.
I told him I could give him 99. I didn't have the 100. But JL, what can we do to help you? I'll get you an agent, man. I'm a hustler.
He's a hustler.
I'll take him at gunpoint if I have to.
Yeah, that would be nice. But I've had a pleasant time here. This has been a nice respite from my usual day of anxiety. So you've already done enough. But
darling, we love you.
You know what? I have anger issues. I guess I should just admit it. But I listened to Rogan because in my mind he's my competition and I'm going to overtake him. But he had Shane Gillis on. Do you know Shane?
I've worked with Shane.
You have. So Shane does probably the worst Trump impersonation I've ever heard. And he was doing it for Rogan. And Rogan was like, wow, that's incredible, man. That's wild. And the whole time I'm thinking, JL's impression of Trump is like, it is Trump. Like there's no impersonation.
What I've noticed though is that people, I think he likes Shane Gillis. Shane Gillis is a nice guy, funny guy, and I
Shane's ass.
What I think I've noticed, with a little removed from the situation and some perspective, is it seems like a lot of people sort of like different things about different. Like there's a handful of very good Trump impressions, and people tend to gravitate. Either mine, I think, has overwhelmingly the best content, even if you don't think the voice is the best. It's the best by far in terms of the actual content within the impression.
It's huge.
Thank you. And with Shane Gillis, I think what's funny about him, he did a video as Trump, I saw, and he has a good physicality for Trump. Like,
yeah.
And I don't mean this as an insult to him, but they're both kind of, he's not in as bad shape as Trump, obviously, but he's a 6'3" kind of husky,
he's a fat, doughy white
kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I think I wouldn't go that, but I think it plays into like that being that element of it. And I think Rogan probably just likes him, but I see what he does with his Trump impression.
But it's not even close. It's like, there's no as NWA would have said, there's no samsarison. There is just no comparison at all. So Rogan, when I do, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the one thing I will say that gave me some perspective, I burned a lot of anger and energy in 2020 because I was having this great moment and the world sort of shifted its comedic attentions onto somebody who was doing lip sync videos of Trump. Mm-hmm. And I say this not to denigrate that person. I know who she is. Whatever happened to her? She like disappeared now.
She's writing a TV series and a book.
I forget her name. Yeah.
But I'm not even saying this. This isn't about her. This is about the wider world. After I was done being frustrated and angry and disappointed that like my moment had sort of been eclipsed by somebody who was doing something that was pretty common on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to, it was probably helpful for me in the long run because now other things don't bother me as much. Like, in other words, if you say, would I like to be on Joe Rogan's platform promoting my stuff? I'm already here, so do I really need it? But I would no longer be jealous of Shane Gillis for like, wait, they think his is the best, but mine is so much. That got kind of beat out of me, which I think long-term is a good thing because it allows me to maybe I can be angry about other things.
You know what? My advice to you as a guy who literally yesterday was threatening homicidal action is keep the anger. It's good for you.
Enjoy it. Savor it.
Here's my vow to you. When I do overtake, Karmela and I take over Rogan's #1 spot in the podcasting world, you are going to be my regular guy. You're going to come on. You're going to impersonate Trump. And Shane Gillis, who I know is a nice guy, can tell is a nice guy. He can kiss my ass, and Joe Rogan can kiss my ass. So, JL, cannot thank you enough. Before you go, we're going to give you some plugs here. You've got your 2 podcasts every week, Making Podcasts Great Again, MPGA, #MPGA, 2 podcasts every week, as well as the Righteous PK podcast. JL is appearing on the new season of Billions on Showtime. His website is jlcomedy.com for live shows and all social media links. And he's got a new special, Half-Blackface. Great name.
Yep.
Should be available this spring.
That is funny.
Sometime before I pass away, you'll be able to get that special. But I filmed it in October, and I think we'll be able to, if somebody doesn't buy it, it should be pre-orderable in February.
Okay. Awesome, man. We're going to look for it.
No, I religiously buy all the books of all the 48 people. I just had to buy a new bookshelf.
That's my inheritance.
And I will definitely get your
everything.
No, whatever is coming out.
His special. You'll get it. Hopefully, God willing, it'll be on Netflix. JL is
JL, you're gonna do it. You're gonna sell it. You just have to believe it and get a good agent. Don't rationalize. You rationalize a lot of things out of your own brain. So get a new good agent and go for it. You have the talent. Why wouldn't you?
JL,
at this point, I'll settle for an agent and then I'll worry about the good.
Well, listen, I don't want to. I lived in LA and I don't want to sound LA, but I've got some contacts at CAA. So let's talk after the broadcast, if you will, and I'll still do whatever I can.
He always says, "Let's talk," then he never talks.
I always talk, Karmela. Karmela, don't irritate me.
And you can't spell CAA without a Cauvin or a Cauvin. You can't spell a Cauvin without CAA.
Without that,
that's going to be my big pitch to them.
You know what? They're a bunch of morons for not repping this guy. I would rep this guy in 2 seconds. By the way, Karmela, that was a 49th episode in a row that you as soon as I was trying to wrap the show, you extended it. But JL, it was a pleasure. May the Utah Jazz win the NBA World Championships.
Or at least 53 wins in the season to cover my over-under bet. I'll accept that as a consolation prize.
Yeah, and while I'm supposed to ask you for stuff, the last thing I will ask of you is please tweet this out. Once we get
When's
the link.
Going up?
Next week, it'll be up. It's
absolutely.
It's gonna look like I don't know what because of our camera issues, but don't worry about that.
No, but the camera issues are very appropriate.
JL, you are the man. You are the impersonator. There is no one better. So keep up the good work, keep the anger going, and hopefully we stay in touch, man.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Mr. President, say hello to JL Cauvin.
Right back with the news.
He's got a French name. He's very weak, so we don't like that.
Okay.
Welcome back. It's time for the news schmooze.
So aside from our technical nightmare today, what did you think of Jean-Louis Cauvin?
I just told you while you were trying to put on the image, the camera, which you failed at. It's not your fault.
No, it is not.
To make the long story short,
It's hard to do a visual podcast on YouTube without a camera, but go on. That's just a minor point. Go on.
Well, that's a detail that we shouldn't get stuck on.
Yeah.
The upshot with the
can send people to Mars, but I can't do a podcast.
JL Cauvin is that the reason he appeals to me personally, and I'm not a snob, but yes, I am. I think that the combination of being hilariously funny and very bright is a very, 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 very seductive thing to listen to.
JL, it's not just Andrew Cuomo hitting on my mom. It's my mom hitting on you now. Look at that. All right, it's time for the news schmooze here. Before we get cracking
Everything
with
has to be sexual. It could be just lovingly, maternally.
Before we get to the actual schmooze, news schmooze, we're going to start with a stat I saw that I was really blown away by, no pun intended. Pornhub, with its undulating ocean of explicit content. Carm, have you been on Pornhub?
No, and I don't plan to go on.
Pornhub is now the #1 porn website in the world, and they are often ranked among the 10 most viewed websites in all the globe, on the globe. More Americans use Pornhub than they use Twitter, Netflix, or Instagram. The reason I caught this is someone just burned the owner's home, who lives in Quebec, Montreal, Canada, to the ground. They don't know who did it or what the motivation was. It could be an angry parent of someone that was exploited on there, but I guess it's no surprise that Americans are watching porn more than they are Twitter, is it?
By the way, I have to open a parenthesis here.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to do, because I really like JL Cauvin.
Did I mention I love doing a visual podcast on YouTube with no camera? Go on.
I wanted to give him the advice that we got, which is probably going to help him a lot.
Carm, what did I tell you about grunting on air?
I want to have my melodious voice, and there was a little bird in my throat. To make the short story long, we should, and it's not too late because he will see when we produce the video and audio, that I am advising him, but they advised us, get on TikTok.
100%.
Right? Because he mentioned everything, but he didn't mention that he's on TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok is, I guess, a spot if you're 15 and want to get famous. But yes, continuing on with the news schmooze here, we'll keep this brief. As you can tell, I'm dejected by our camera situation. The UK's Prince Charles. Have you heard of Prince Charles, Carm?
Yes, that's the big brother of Andrew.
He's commissioned portraits of 7 Holocaust survivors to be displayed at Buckingham Palace for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. He didn't realize he could just fly you in. Is this genuine, sincere?
I wouldn't go.
Why not? I knew you'd have an opinion. You don't buy his crap?
No. I buy his crap. It's very noble crap, but I'm staying here with my husband.
I don't pay attention to a lot of history. The Brits were good to us in World War II, though, from what I take it.
No, they were not bad to us because they didn't gas us. But then after the war, they were occupying Palestine, and they hung a few of us. But they deserved it maybe because they blew up the King David Hotel and so forth.
This isn't all Holocaust/Jewish news schmooze, by the way. I don't know. It just came together that way.
I think you love it.
When Mendy Levy was 15 years old, he had never thrown a baseball, seen a stuffed animal, watched television, or held a cell phone. He was born into the extreme fundamentalist Jewish sect of Lev Tahor. Have you heard of this, Carm?
Yes, they're like the worst in my book.
He told the New York Post, raised to distrust outsiders and to believe that Children's Protective Services wanted to take Jewish children from their families and have them brought up as Gentiles. The teenager reached his breaking point in September 2018. Lev Tahor's leader, Nachman Helbrons, whose late father, Shlomo Helbrons, founded the group.
You did this because of the names. You like to pronounce.
Allegedly commanded, maybe subconsciously, commanded Levi to marry his 12-year-old first cousin. What is going on with Lev Tahor, Carmen? Where do I find these people?
You know what? You give a bad name to Jews.
I knew you'd say that.
Every single religious group has its extremes, okay? Everyone.
On to the next Holocaust
and
story.
And this is not normal.
This is good for us. They're never-ending Holocaust stories.
I don't know what are you pushing the Holocaust. We are already past the Holocaust. We are heading towards the new one now.
The idea behind Hate Ends Now, the cattle car experience.
I saw that on the news.
I didn't mean to laugh.
It's so sad. They put that deformed old man sitting in
what
there.
happened to him? So let's tell the audience.
He's 95.
No, he was in a fire or something. 95 doesn't mean your nose burns into your face.
Maybe he had a cancer from being in the sun too much.
That's probably what it was. So here in Miami Beach, if you drive through Bal Harbor, which is the fancy schmancy area where the mall is, there's now a cattle car right in the middle of the little circle there. My kids asked me what it was. I said that's where you put cows, so you take them from one farm to the other. I didn't have the heart to tell them, but the exhibit is now called Hate Ends Now, the cattle car experience. I mean, it almost sounds like a ride at Disney World.
That's the American way.
The motto here is, or what Sally Hess, who organized it, one of the organizers said, we're all brothers and sisters, we're all God's children. That's what Hate Ends Now is all about. And Jordana Leibowitz, whose idea this was, said if people during the Holocaust would have stood up more, had not let hate go unchecked, then it would have saved millions of lives. So do you think it is essentially our fault for not standing up more, Carm, and leaving hate unchecked, as she says?
Ask the gypsies. Ask all the discriminated peoples who had no country, who for centuries had to keep their heads low and so forth. I can talk about it for an hour.
So if you saw Jordana Leibowitz, would you tell her off? That's bottom line, my question.
Yeah, there was a stupid statement, you know. It's like, you know, here is the rabbi today. He threw the chair at the terrorists,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And made his 3 congregants and himself run out.
And then they said it wasn't really related to anything anti-Semitic. The FBI says
and then
that.
they apologized. Let's move on. I'm sick and tired of this.
Last related question to that. Should I take my kids into the cattle car? So it sounds like a
100% not.
We'll be right
Take
back
them into the
with
park.
3 questions for Grandma.
It's time now for 3 questions for Grandma.
Carm, you know, I've been thinking about Jean-Louis Cauvin in the break, and I really am falling deeper in love with him, mainly because I think we are very, we have simpatico. Like, he's an anxious Haitian Irishman, and I'm an anxious Jew.
I love it. Half-Blackface. It's very clever.
Half-Blackface is kind of hilarious. He's a funny dude. I don't get, and he's been doing it a long time. You know, a lot of this stuff is self-promotion.
What is it?
Just like, you just like...
No, but he's not good at it.
He could self-promote more, I think.
He's not good at it. He's just like too normal.
I'm going to bring this guy into the stratosphere, and then I'll take 10%. That's my new goal. But on to 3 questions for Grandma.
You know what? One day I'll give you an award for saying the highest number of most unrealistic things that you will do.
I thought this question was probably one of the best questions that I've received from your grandchildren and my kids. And it goes like this. Why do children have so much energy and adults are so calm? Asked by my daughter Vida.
Word of honor, I thought of this, that there is some kind of an internal engine in them, that they bounce off the walls when they're little, and they sit like I am sitting, like in one place and hardly moving when they are old. But I think there are also differences in temperament. Some people are always, like my sister is always fidgeting, moving, going, standing up, doesn't sit in one place all the time. And I am always, if I sit down, 3 hours later, I remember to shift from one position to the other.
Next question.
I don't know the answer why children are doing it.
Next question from
I'm going to look into this because I don't know why.
interruption 937 on the day. Next question from the Z-Bugs. When you're born, are you crying or sleeping?
Crying.
And she wants to know why.
We know what awaits us. No, I think one of the reasons that babies, when they're born and they bring in the oxygen and they get startled in there, they don't have to breathe. Their lungs have to swing into action when their heads are out.
You hear that, Z-Bugs? Your lungs swing into action, and that's why. Last question.
I think so. I'll double check this too. I can't stand that I don't know these things.
Last question.
With precision.
Last question. We did this on the drive to school. I got home from work at 2 in the morning and took my kids. Oh, they woke up at 5. You do the math. That's 3 hours. And then I took my kids to school, and Judah Maccabee, the power puncher, he wanted to be involved at 2.5. And this is his question. How does Daddy put Ethel in the back of the car? Do you have an answer to that?
Do you lift her?
I don't. She's like
she jumps. She's like a
world-class athlete.
Like children.
Yeah.
Like children. She's very active.
Mabel, I have to carry, but Ethel, not only does Ethel get into the car, she jumps all the way up on top of the baby seat, the car seat. So she's going like a 6-foot vertical leap, basically. Just as a side note to this, everyone knows my beloved Mabel Rose. By the way, her Sweet 16 is in 4 days. The other thing is, I decided that I wanted her half-sister to have a similar name, so her name is Ethel Bug Johnson. But now, 7 months into her life, I'm questioning that decision because in Miami, where everyone speaks Spanish,
nobody can pronounce Ethel.
Ethel is Athol. So everyone calls Ethel Athol, and everyone asks me, why did I name my dog Athol? But I say it's Ethel, not Athol. Athol, not Ethel. America, we love you. Carm, any parting words?
We survived one more, but it's very cute because Joel counts them by 2 lately. I don't know if we have 49 or 47.
I lost track. All I know is this episode
47. We are definitely in the high 40s,
the episode
and we are
took
very
years
proud.
off my
It's
life.
like we survived. We are survivors in a rough world, and we hope you survive in a rough world too.
God bless. Love you, America.